Welcome to tonight's sleep story. Before we begin, I invite you to take a moment to settle in comfortably. Allow your body to sink into your bed, feeling fully supported and surrounded by warmth. If you prefer to skip this opening and breathing guidance, the timestamps for each chapter can be found in the video description below. This is your time to unwind. And tonight's story, The Cloud Weaver's Song, is here to guide you into a space of rest. It is a tranquil tale about Aeloria, a gentle being who spins clouds from starlight, sending them softly across the night to bring dreams to those who need them most. Let's take a slow, calming breath together. Inhale deeply through your nose, feeling the cool air fill your lungs. Pause for a moment, then exhale slowly through your mouth, as if releasing the weight of the day. With each breath, imagine a quiet mist settling over you, a mist spun from soft clouds and faint stars, wrapping you in calm and ease. Let your breath flow naturally, and feel your shoulders, neck, and arms relax just a little more with every exhale. If your mind wanders or thoughts interrupt, imagine them as clouds drifting slowly through a silver sky. There is no need to hold on to them. Simply watch them pass and return to the rhythm of your breath or the sound of my voice. Each inhale draws in a sense of peace. Each exhale carries away any tension. Let yourself settle deeper into this moment, knowing there's nothing you need to do now but rest. As we begin the Cloud Weaver's Song, let yourself be carried gently into Aeloria's world, a timeless place where clouds are crafted and stars hum faint lullabies. Let this story wrap around you like a soft blanket, helping you drift quietly into a deep and peaceful sleep. Chapter 1. The Loom of Starlight. At the edge of the heavens, where the sky deepens to the softest shade of blue and the stars begin to blink open their ancient eyes, Aeloria woke. The gentle hush of the Twilight Realm greeted her, a sound so quiet it was like the sky itself was holding its breath. She stretched her long, slender arms, and the threads of light that made up her world seemed to sigh in response, unraveling just a little to greet the day's end. Slowly she rose, her movements deliberate and unhurried, as though time itself moved at her pace. The celestial loom waited for her, always waiting, always ready, its silver frame shimmering softly against the muted sky. Aeloria's bare feet glided over the cool, silken ground of Spindle Peak as she approached it, her robes trailing behind her like ripples on water. She did not rush. There was no need for haste here. Time in the Twilight Realm was not measured in moments or hours, but in the slow, steady passage of light to dark and dark to light. With the gentlest of touches, Aeloria drew her fingers across the loom's starlit threads. They hummed faintly beneath her hands, a sound like distant waves meeting a quiet shore. The hum grew into a whispering song as she began her work, the threads weaving themselves into clouds as soft as mist and as light as breath. Slowly they took form, some as drifting clusters, others stretching into smooth, rippling veils. The clouds would drift down to the world below, carrying dreams to those who slept, cradling them in a comfort they could not see but could always feel. Lioren, her constant companion, stirred nearby, the soft flutter of his wings, translucent and pale as frost, echoed faintly across the peak. He perched on the edge of the loom, his small, feathered body aglow with threads of light that seemed woven into him. "You always start with the gentlest ones," he murmured, his voice low and melodic, like chimes swaying in a faint breeze. Aeloria smiled, though her eyes remained on the loom. "The gentlest clouds carry the sweetest dreams," she replied, her voice no louder than a murmur, a breath that could vanish on the wind. She carefully pulled another thread, watching it stretch and drift until it formed into a perfect rounded wisp. "Tonight, the world will rest easily." Lioren nodded, his wings brushing softly against the air. Together they worked without urgency, the rhythm of their task soothing and sure. The threads continued to sing as they spun, weaving patterns too delicate for any but Aeloria to see. Sometimes the clouds took the shape of rolling fields, faint impressions of trees, or glimmers of silver rivers. Other times, they were nothing more than endless softness, like dreams not yet fully remembered. Whatever form they took, they were always calm, always quiet. Beyond Spindle Peak, the first stars began to glow brighter, their light pooling like silver ink across the sky. The Twilight Realm stretched on forever in every direction, a land of weightless air and endless light. No sharp sounds disturbed it, no sudden movements disrupted its peace. Aeloria paused for a moment to take it in, her eyes soft as she looked out across the vast expanse. There was something comforting about its stillness, something steady, timeless, and certain. "There," she murmured, gesturing to the clouds now hovering above the loom. They drifted lazily as though reluctant to leave the safety of her hands. Lioren stretched his wings and let out a faint, contented sound as he took to the air. One by one, he nudged the clouds away, guiding them to where the wind shepherds waited beyond the mist. The shepherds' quiet hums echoed faintly across the sky, blending with the loom's fading song. Satisfied, Aeloria sank down to sit at the edge of the loom. The threads grew still beneath her hands, their work complete, and a deeper quiet settled over Spindle Peak. Her gaze lifted once more to the sky, where the stars now shone fully, steady and sure. The first cloud had already begun its journey down to the world below, trailing faint ribbons of silver mist behind it. Somewhere far away, a restless soul would feel the weight of their thoughts ease, lulled by the touch of the cloud Aeloria had spun. "Rest now," she whispered to no one in particular, her words carrying softly into the still air. The clouds would bring peace to others, but the act of weaving them had brought her peace as well. There would be more to weave tomorrow. There always was. But for now, the world was quiet. The sky was calm, and the dreamer's work was done. Chapter 2: The Bridge of Mist. The mist bridge stretched out before Aeloria, a glowing path suspended in nothingness, shimmering faintly as though spun from the light of forgotten moons. Its surface was cool beneath her bare feet, sturdy yet soft, like walking on clouds made solid. Lioren flew ahead, his pale wings brushing the mist and leaving delicate ripples that vanished as quickly as they appeared. The air here was different, thinner, like the edge of a breath held too long, and it carried with it the faintest hum, a sound that seemed to rise from the bridge itself, steady and eternal. Aeloria walked with purpose, though her movements remained unhurried, her hands still carrying the silver mist of unfinished clouds. Around her, the horizon was a blur of muted light, shifting gently between dusk and night, as if it could not decide where to rest. In the distance, the shapes of the wind shepherds began to emerge, their tall, slender figures moving slowly through the vastness of the sky. They drifted forward with hands outstretched, waiting to receive the clouds and guide them to the world below. "Take them softly," Lioren called to the shepherds, his voice ringing out like a note on a glass chime. It was a quiet sound, but here in the space of endless mist and air, it carried far. The shepherds' heads turned in unison, their faces shadowed and calm as they moved forward to gather the clouds. One by one, the shapes Aeloria had spun were taken gently into their long, flowing arms, carried as though they were made of spun sugar, fragile and fleeting. The shepherds whispered as they walked, low voices that wove together into a song, layered and wordless, its rhythm deep and slow. Aeloria stopped for a moment at the edge of the bridge, watching the clouds drift into the endlessness. Her eyes lingered on the way they settled across the unseen world, spreading like sighs into valleys, across forests, and over restless seas. She could see it in her mind, a gentle fog rolling through quiet meadows, brushing over sleeping rooftops, curling softly around the edges of dreams. The image filled her with a warmth that matched the stillness of her surroundings, and for a moment she stood motionless, her hands empty and her gaze distant. "The night takes them well tonight," Lioren murmured as he landed beside her, his wings folding neatly against his back. Aeloria nodded, the faintest smile lifting her lips. There was satisfaction in watching the clouds find their purpose, each one carrying its own small piece of calm, its own quiet promise of rest. The wind shepherds faded slowly into the distance, their soft song following them like echoes trailing into silence. Together, Aeloria and Lioren turned back toward Spindle Peak, the mist bridge glowing faintly beneath their steps as they moved. The hum of the bridge grew softer with each passing moment, as if it too were settling into slumber. Above them, the stars continued their silent watch, and behind them, the clouds floated onward to wherever they were needed. It was a quiet journey home, a journey measured not in distance, but in moments of stillness, each step a part of the rhythm, each breath an unspoken lullaby. Chapter 3. The Dreaming Glades. The Dreaming Glades emerged from the mist like an ancient memory, floating islands bathed in soft silver light. Starflowers bloomed here in clusters, their faint glow spilling across the surface like drops of liquid moonlight. The petals swayed in a breeze that couldn't be seen, and their faint fragrance, something between lavender and rain, hung gently in the air. Aeloria stepped onto the nearest glade, her feet sinking slightly into the cool, cloud-like ground. She moved between the flowers, her fingertips grazing their fragile blooms as she passed. Lioren settled nearby, his wings folding as he perched on the edge of the glade. "The flowers are restless tonight," he murmured, his voice low and thoughtful. Aeloria paused to listen, tilting her head as though she could hear the same quiet unease. The starflowers rustled faintly, the sound soft and wandering, like a question asked in the dark. They wait for dreams yet to come, she replied, her tone soothing as if answering them. The flowers stilled at her voice, their glow deepening into a richer silver, like candle flames finding their calm. The dreaming glades had always been a place of waiting, a quiet space where dreams lingered before finding their way into the hearts of sleeping souls. Aeloria knelt among the flowers and drew a small thread of mist from the air. It coiled around her fingers, weightless and shimmering, as she worked it into something new, delicate shapes that rose into the air like tiny drifting stars. These were the smallest clouds, the gentlest ones, spun from the quietest parts of the night. Lioren watched silently, the only sound the faint rhythmic pull of Aeloria's breath as she worked. As the last of the mist took shape, the air shifted again, and a deep, distant hum began to fill the space. It was not loud, nor was it sharp. Instead, it rode through the glades like the sound of waves brushing against a faraway shore, a hum that seemed to settle into every petal and blade of silver grass. "The shepherds are moving," Lioren said softly, his feathers ruffling as the sound touched him. Aeloria nodded, releasing the final thread into the air. The small cloud drifted upward, carried away by the unseen current. She rose to her feet and looked across the glades, her gaze lingering on the endless clusters of glowing flowers. Somewhere below, in houses tucked beneath hills and forests hidden under midnight skies, the dreams would soon arrive. Visions of quiet fields, of soft light, of still waters, reflecting the stars. These were the dreams that healed, that eased the weight of restless minds. Aeloria's work was quiet and unseen, but it was enough. "It is time," she murmured, and Lioren spread his wings in agreement. Together they moved toward the edge of the glade, where the mist curled and pooled like an open threshold. Behind them, the starflowers continued to glow, their gentle light carrying on in silence. As Aeloria stepped into the mist, the dreaming glades faded behind her, their quiet beauty sinking once again into the timeless hum of the Twilight Realm. Chapter 4. The Song of the Skybell. The Skybell hung suspended at the edge of the heavens, its massive glass-like surface reflecting the pale glow of the stars. Its frame stretched upward like the trunk of an ancient tree, its roots disappearing into the mist below, as though it had always been there. Aeloria approached slowly, her steps carrying no sound, Lioren gliding close behind her. The air here was heavier, the quiet deeper, as if the sky itself paused to listen. The first note came without warning, a low, resonant hum that seemed to bloom from within the Skybell itself. The sound rolled outward, soft and slow, spreading in waves that vibrated gently through the mist and the distant, waiting stars. Aeloria closed her eyes as the tone washed over her, its rhythm matching the steady rise and fall of her breath. It was a sound that spoke not to the ears, but to something quieter within, a sound that whispered of nightfall, of safety, of rest. "The bell sings earlier tonight," Lioren observed, his voice hushed, as if unwilling to interrupt. He perched on a ledge of mist that clung to the bell's edge, his wings folded tight. Aeloria gave the faintest nod, her eyes still closed. "It knows the night is ready," she said softly, her voice nearly blending into the hum that continued to swell and fade. The Skybell had always known, its song rising when the world below began to surrender to the quiet. Aeloria reached out, her fingertips grazing the smooth, shimmering surface of the bell. A deeper note rang out at her touch, slower this time and lower, like a heartbeat within the air. The mist rippled outward, each wave growing fainter until it dissolved into stillness. Somewhere far below, the weight of sleepless thoughts would ease, drawn away by the sound that carried peace with it, a sound that whispered of dreams yet to come. For a long time, neither Aeloria nor Lioren moved. They simply listened as the Skybell's song stretched on, each note lingering just long enough to settle deeply before the next began. It was a song without melody, without haste, and yet it seemed to sing of everything. The rhythm of time, the quiet of stars, the softness of clouds as they drifted unseen over sleeping fields. When the final note finally fell away, the silence that followed felt fuller, like a deep exhale that settled across the sky. Aeloria withdrew her hand, letting it fall gently to her side. "The night will hold well," she murmured, her words carried away by the lingering echo. Lioren spread his wings, the faintest flutter breaking the stillness. "And so will the dreamers," he replied. Together, they turned from the Skybell, leaving its great shining form to rest once more at the edge of the heavens. Behind them, the sky felt softer somehow, as though it, too, were drifting into a dream. Chapter 5. The Weaver's Rest. Aeloria returned to Spindle Peak as the last threads of starlight melted into the deep navy of the sky. The celestial loom waited, its surface quiet and still, its work complete for this night. The faint hum of spun threads lingered in the air like the aftersound of a melody just ended. She stepped forward and rested her hands lightly on its frame, as if offering silent thanks. The quiet here was deeper than silence, a space untouched by time or movement, holding only the memory of gentle creation. Lioren landed beside her, his wings folding with soft finality, his voice barely more than a breath. "The clouds have gone far tonight. The world feels still." Aeloria looked past him, her gaze falling to where the mists rolled softly across the horizon. She could see nothing beyond them now, no distant shepherds, no drifting clouds, only the endless calm of the Twilight Realm. "It is enough," she whispered, her words curling softly into the cool, waiting air. She stepped away from the loom and moved toward the edge of the peak. Here, the ground gave way to open sky, a vast expanse stretching in every direction, scattered with stars like dust. Aeloria sank to sit at the edge, folding her legs beneath her, her robes pooling like ripples on still water. Lioren perched just a little further away, his quiet presence keeping company without breaking the stillness. For a while, neither of them spoke. The stars blinked lazily overhead, their light steady and soft, while the faintest suggestion of a breeze stirred the mist below. Aeloria closed her eyes and listened, first to the quiet, then to the faint sound of her own breath, rising and falling in time with the world around her. Each exhale felt deeper, slower, carrying the weight of the night away into the waiting sky. "The stars will keep watch now," Lioren said, his voice almost lost to the distance. Aeloria opened her eyes, watching the faint glow of Spindle Peak fade slowly into the darker edges of the horizon. She let her gaze drift upward once more to the blanket of stars suspended far above. "And the clouds will hold the dreamers," she replied. Her voice was a murmur, soft as the wind's touch, a final lullaby for a night already settled. Slowly, Aeloria lay back against the soft ground, her head cradled by the mist that swirled gently around her. The Twilight Realm held her in its steady, eternal quiet, its hum barely audible now, like the faintest vibration of strings at rest. Her eyes closed once more, her breath slower still, until it was little more than the quiet rhythm of sleep. Above, the stars continued to shine, and below the clouds drifted on, carrying peace across the world, just as they always had.